Hello, it's Vanessa, and today I'm going to be discussing the Treaty of Versailles and how it basically started World War II. Now, to understand why the Treaty of Versailles happened and what it became a result of, we first have to talk about World War I, which was why it was created. Now, World War I was also known as the Great War, or the War to End All Wars, which obviously didn't happen, because it was so devastating, and just the sheer amount of destruction and deaths that happened as a part of it were just like nobody had ever seen before. Originally, it was supposed to be a small war between two countries, but due to the ally system, it turned into one of the deadliest wars of all time. When I say deadly, I mean just completely total devastation. There was a total of 37 million casualties or deaths as a result of it, and because of all this death and destruction and devastation, many of the countries that had taken part in the war would end up falling into almost a depression. Now, even though the war had been started by Austria, in the end, it was mostly blamed on Germany. Now, why would you take a war, blame it on a completely different country than the country it was actually started on? Well, even though Germany didn't start the war, other other countries needed a scapegoat to blame the war on, and Germany kind of fit the part. And there is a part of the Treaty of Versailles, which is the Treaty of Peace that all other countries agreed on making so that none of this would ever happen again. There's a part of that which is known as the guilt clause, and the guilt clause basically said that Germany is to take all the blame and all the consequences of the Great War and just accept it. Not really the most fair thing in the world. Now, the Treaty of Versailles also said that Germany would have to become weak, a weaker power, and in order to do that, they implemented these very harsh conditions which Germany was forced to follow. Now, first of all, they called for immediate demilitarization, and that basically means that Germany could have no army, no navy, no air force, no military kind of personnel or group. They could have an army, but it could be of no more than 100,000 men. And in addition to that, they had to pay over $300 billion, that is in today's monetary values, in reparations to cover all the other countries' damages. So all the other countries that suffered damages to their lands and like loss of food and all these other terrible things, Germany had to pay for those other countries with their own money. And in order to do this, they also had to relinquish some of their territories and even parts of their own country just to make up for the cost. And like we discussed before, they were forced to admit complete and total fault of World War One. Now, because of these reparations and these very unfair details that they were forced to follow of the Treaty of Versailles, Germany fell into a great economic downfall, like almost a Great Depression, and this caused famine and just a countrywide depression. It was terrible, and Germany, just as a country, was devastated. Now, as a result of this, Germany then decided to not follow the guidelines of the Treaty of Versailles. They decided this isn't fair, they can't do this to us. We didn't start the war, but we're being completely blamed for it, and they're taking parts of our country away, and they're basically ripping our country apart, and we're not going to stand for it anymore. However, this decision to not follow the Treaty of Versailles was greatly influenced by the newly popularized Nazi Party, which was led by Adolf Hitler. Now, the Nazi Party was nothing new to Germany. Before it was known as the Nazi Party, it was known as the German Workers' Party, and it was this anti-Semitic and German nationalist political organization. And it really didn't gain public exposure until Adolf Hitler joined. Of course, they were trying to recruit people and say, like, hey, come join our group, fight for what we believe in. And at first, the German public basically said, no, we don't want any part of what you're doing. This is insane. You guys are extremists. We don't want any part of this. However, the devastation of the Treaty of Versailles was so great to these people, to these good people, that they felt like they had no other choice but to turn to the Nazi Party for refuge. And when they eventually did, this would give Hitler the support he needed to build up his party and build up an army that would eventually begin World War II. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something today and didn't find it completely boring. Bye.